Alrighty. There was plenty of fell bullet propaganda in the previous video. That was only the half of it. Welcome to the actual fell bullet propaganda, specifically that your sinners' lives are resources for damage. Now typically most fights in Limbus are easy enough for you to not lose any sinner. What if they happen to take enough chip damage to line them up for a finisher? Well, if they happen to be PS Fatal and can become Pride Fatal too, you can charge up Yi-Sung's fell bullet ego and put a round through them and into the enemy. Even better if you can at least get him to 13 poise and enough resonance to max out his torn memory on use. This will guarantee that the bullet is a crit, as well as applying the maximum damage increase to the first coin to secure an ally kill. Upon dooming your teammate, you get a whole host of benefits. Free poise to Yi-Sung and 2 other sinners, 2 ego resources based on who was smoked, and of course AoE damage to everyone else who was involved. Oh, and that damage is also further boosted by torn memory and critical damage per stack. Now, if you fail to kill your buddy, only one target randomly gets plinked by the ricochet. Sometimes that's all you need, but usually you've got better options at that point. As a he ego, it has a reasonably hefty cost, 2 wrath and 6 pride, but overall, more than fuelable if you design your team around having enough pride to fire it off. The corrosion, on the other hand, offers some extra heft to the weight of the bullets. For 50% more resources, you can overclock this ego to instead gain far more damage conditionals. The performance of this ego goes up dramatically, increasing the damage of the first coin by poise, torn memory and crits, as well as upping the ego resource return. We also get 4 poise back to boot for Yi-Sung and 3 other allies instead. Past there, the second coin has more critical damage based on torn memory once again. All of the above makes this a very hard-hitting ego when you line up all its easy-to-meet conditionals. That is, if the content was hard enough to actually warrant using this thing a majority of the time. In more difficult content, where we can expect our sinners to lose clashes and tank more hits, the value of this ego goes upwards, but as most units perform subpar when damaged or when continuously losing clashes, there isn't many instances where this thing can see its full potential. Outside of really high MD floors or railway, I haven't found too much use for this thing. It's flashy, it's cool, it has that nice Exodia style payoff when you entirely design around it, but it is far from actually practical when used as your main source of damage or staple consideration. With a bit of an asterisk. What if we don't actually consider the lives of our sinners valuable? What if we deliberately play subpar, either taking those losing clashes or deliberately getting injured? Is the payoff from running this ego alone worth it? Still no. The amount of damage that gets made up by this ego does not justify team building alone. The content is just not hard enough. So is there even a way of salvaging it? Making it our staple game plan? Well, kinda. And that falls in line with a few core staples in making a fell bullet team. First, we must talk about our boy failure, Fell Bullets, Mr. Gubo Yi-Sung. Compared to his story counterpart, this guy actually aura farms and dishes out a tremendous amount of damage when allowed to kill off an ally. On top of that, they also have synergy with the Fell Bullet ego, changing the consumption of torn memory to nil when used. Rather than losing all torn memory after ego use, they instead retain all of it, which then allows the ID to fire off an S3 against one of their allies the following turn immediately. In the event that multiple allies are lined up for the slaughter, Fell Bullet Yi-Sung can start rolling them over back to back with impunity. As he doesn't lose the torn memory stacks upon using his ego, he could even double or triple spam the ego, SP and resources willing. It also means he will keep gaining poise as he kills more allies, since the ego and his S3 both offer the same pre-attack poise gain. Unfortunately though, if he does use his S3, all torn memory stacks will be lost and will need to build them up from the start again. Wait, he can build them up? Yes. Yes, he can. In addition to sourcing them through his ego, he can also gain torn memory for the use of his S1 and S2. Both of them offer some okay benefit from landing them. S1 offers a torn memory for using it, and an additional one for critting with it. It also gives free poise count and inflicts 1 bleed count, has a bunch of coin power conditionals, and more damage based on torn memory. S2 is mostly the same, offering an identical coin power conditional as well as added damage from torn memory. The main difference here is the skill aims to amp up both poise and bleed potency instead, rather than count. It also offers up to 3 torn memory provided you can crit on its unbreakable coin. Why this one has an unbreakable coin, I honestly couldn't tell you. Odds are guns is just supposed to be that hard to stop or something. Anyhow, the main star of his kit still lies with the S3. As outlined previously, it eats all your torn memory and doesn't give it back. It also doesn't gain torn memory before use, so beware of that if you ever intend on replacing skills in MD. However, in return for eating all of your stacks, it amps damage up considerably. First off, it has a bunch of poise-based coin power conditionals. It pays to actually build up both count and potency in this case. And of course, it gains attack weight based on torn memory stacks. As torn memory maxes out at 7, we can only gain 2 attack weight this way, focusing all the damage on one friendly unit and 3 sub-targets should we have 7 torn memory at the ready. First coin has some cool gimmicks we can play around. If the target is an ally, we can ignore their pierce resistance. It gets set as fatal for this attack. We also amp the damage significantly through torn memory. Each poise potency also ups our crit damage as well. As for the second coin, much like the first, it also just ricochets if we don't kill our ally with it. However, if we do land a kill, all the sub-targets will be in for an extreme amount of damage, as killing an ally doubles the bonus from torn memory, almost tripling the damage from the second coin. It further amps itself up poise and torn memory as well. On top of all of that, the healthier the target we manage to kill, the more damage we're stacking on top. While this last bonus is rather impractical to have functioning to 100%, throwing a low-level ID into the Fell Bullet Grinder is a consideration to make thanks to this bonus. Aside from that, it just inflicts some bleed potency and counts if we're successful in killing the mate. Now compared to the Ego, we can make use of this S3 without killing any allies. It turns into a boring single target attack that deals very little damage. Despite involving a bunch of extra enemies for its attack weight, it does not inflict any damage to them. Last, of course, is their defense skill, the Clashable Counter. We get very consistent gains out of it, that being a guarantee of 2 torn memory and on a successful hit, 2 poise potency and counts. It's also a pride skill, letting us generate resources as required for his passive and of course Ego. His always active passive revolves around torn memory, making him lose and gain the equivalent number of stacks every turn. This makes it so he doesn't just lose all of his stacks from skills every single turn. The wording of his S3, unfortunately, makes it so that he doesn't gain back the torn memory eaten by his S3, as the timing has him losing the stacks before the end of turn. The resource-intensive passive, on the other hand, is all centered around friendly fire. If he manages to kill someone, he gets a unique buff that increases critical damage, lets him inflict more bleed, and of course, snowballs his kills by giving him poise potency and count on kill. This is an extremely powerful effect, however it only lasts a turn, so make sure you have some way of following it up. Whether it be another Ego use, to chain the murders of fellow sinners, or gunning down of other enemies via his other skills. Most notable part of this passive, however, is the regain of torn memory after making use of his Ego. Compared to Magic Bullet Otis, who uses their Ego to gain bullets, this is much the same. Of course though, using it at 7 torn memory doesn't instantly kill the user, as funny as that would be. All that in mind, we've got a few considerations in making a Fell Bullet team. First off, they are no doubt supposed to be our damage dealer. They exist to hit hard and otherwise provide little to no utility to the team. If anything, the team shooting in most cases would be considered detrimental outside of cases where taking damage is ideal, or otherwise grants buffs to the one taking damage. To this end, we have 2 possible options open to us that I'd like to propose. We'll be exploring a specific one for this video, but I'll give a brief outline of both of them nonetheless. First off is the Blois team. This is short for Bleed and Poise. By making use of both status effects, we can get a very powerful engine going through IDs like the Bequad, Chi Faust, Twin Hook Gregor, and Kurokumo Rodya. This allows us to build up a significant amount of poise on our allies, as well as bleed on enemies. However, this setup isn't the most practical, and has a lot of gimmicks to look out for. Specifically, you'd be aiming to get Captain Ish's many gimmicks functional, as well as trying to land Sky Clearing Cut with Rodya. There isn't too much in the way of consistent bleed counts, leaving a little bit to be desired from this setup outside of MD. Inside of MD, we can eliminate a majority of Blois' issues. We can also double dip with a lot of Ego gifts, allowing us an exceedingly powerful and souped up team for the later floors. Heck, we don't even really have to run Fell Bullet Yi-Sung, as we would just be able to run the full Bequad trio in this particular case, and instead profit off of relentless stabbing, rather than going through all the loops and hoops to make an ally explode. Also, since we want those IDs to live, we aren't going to kill any of them outside of Desperation Strikes either. So what of our alternative option? Well, please welcome in the Kurokumo clan. These guys run as a team of 3 or more Kurokumo clan members, all sporting funny tattoos that further enhance their capabilities. Typically, Heathcliff and Ishmael are the 2 staples, as they gain benefits from other Kurokumo clan members existing on the field. But most importantly, they gain benefits from letting other Kurokumo clan members kick the bucket. In the case of both Ishmael and Heathcliff, they both get slash power up for the encounter when a Kurokumo clan member dies. Once 3 of them die, however, they get access to the battle ready status. This further boosts their slash power by 1, and gives them free slash damage on top of granting them more bleed application, as well as bleed count. Plus, the whole idea behind this composition is to set up Kurokumo members besides Heathcliff and Ishmael to die via fell bullet, upon doing so giving us access to some ridiculous benefits. This particular composition I do like more than the Blois one, as there is a stronger feeling of team cohesion, and everyone benefits off of each other in some way or another. Some more than others, admittedly. Anyhow, since I'll be going with the Kurokumo clan composition, let's talk shop about our staples. We can run anywhere between 3 to 6 members of the Kurokumo clan for the full breadth of benefits available to us. However, in this particular case, I would like to run 5 of them. On field, we can expect to run Ishmael, Heathcliff, Rodya, Gregor, and Hongers. Our aim will be to let the latter 3 lower their HP through various gimmicks. Let's explore the main ways we are going to get that to happen. Kurokumo clan captain Ishmael is a team leader style ID. Much like Bamboo Hatted Kim, Lord Hongers, and Manager Don, Ishmael enhances and takes advantage of the other IDs in her faction. In card game terminology, we're making use of a tribal deck base, our tribe of course being the Kurokumo. Ishmael benefits the team by providing them damage up on her S2, defense power up on her defensive, and most importantly, Dark Cloud through her passive. For a Lust Resin of 3, she provides Dark Cloud to her adjacent dashboard clan members, and for 4 Resin, she applies it to all of the members regardless of speed. Dark Cloud allows us to full send on every turn with a Lust Resin, regardless of whether or not we have the clashing power or the stagger threshold to take a hit. Why? Because it grants us unbreakable coins. Wait, but those can still be staggered out of, not these ones. The unbreakables granted by Dark Cloud will always go off due to preventing damage from staggering the ID using them until the skill ends. It also grants +3 final power to skills that lost clashes as well as upping bleed effects. This is what we're going to use as a means of reckless abandon. So long as Ishmael is on the field, and so long as we can get a Lust Resin of 3 to 4 going, we can abuse Dark Cloud to make our IDs full sended, regardless of whether or not it's a particularly good idea. We can use this to take clashes they're not supposed to win, soak damage meant for Yi Sung, and eventually to lower their HP enough to place a bullets through their dome and into our enemies. This single tribal passive enables a majority of our strategy. Alright, so what else are we looking at with her? Well, access to battle ready and permanent slash power increase about sums it up. Also, she detonates bleed stacks of her S3 once things get going. Pretty useful for more damage per turn when fights go on long enough for it to pay off. Second up is Heathcliff. I'll be real specific here and call him real cunty looking. You know it, I know it, just look at those fucking shirt buttons, man. He did not have to leave them that far undone. Anyway, Heathcliff gets the same slash power up and battle ready passive as Ishmael. Also has a whole host of other useful capabilities for us riddled into his kits. Most notably is his retaliation hits. While his passive is active, whenever an ally takes damage, he'll throw over an S1 in retaliation once per turn. However, if the ally dies or is hit at 25% HP or lower, he'll throw in his defensive skill Rules of the Backstreets instead, up to twice even. This skill is very strong, being a single coin clashable counter skill usually, but he reuses this coin based on his personal buffs. If he gains Dark Cloud Blade, whether through his passive or S3, he'll reuse the coin. If he has Battle Ready, he'll reuse the coin as well. Now if he has Cumulus Wall, he'll trigger both of the coin reuse conditionals without needing to fulfill them. Plus, after an S3, he can use his counter next turn to dish out an extraordinary amount of damage. On top of that, so long as Ishmael is on the field, Rules of the Backstreets will always be unbreakable, and have a +4 final power when it breaks. Mind you, even when it does break, he can reuse the damn thing anyway, leading to some very stupid amounts of damage even when we're behind. Unfortunately, we aren't triggering this thing off of fell bullets, as funny as that would be to do so. Regardless, he's another source of ridiculous damage in this team, while dealing out a fair share of supporting counterfire. He scales up with more negative effects on target like Ishmael too, which is going to be a bonus due to how funky the next 3 IDs are going to be. The last 000 we're throwing into the mix here is Kurokumo Rodion. I'll be frank, he sucks. Her whole gimmick is to generate enough poise to use sky clearing cuts on her counter instead of on her S3. Problem being, we get her S3 in normal play anyway, and she can otherwise barely support her own poise. We have to loop her S2 into her S1 first, or find some other source of poise generation for her. Even then, the payoff is mediocre. For a single coin skill, it rolls damn high, but it's from such a long time ago that it just doesn't hit like it's supposed to. While the supporting effects from Ishmael could lend a hand in making things more doable, the lack of poise support in the Kurokumo lineup does make things rather awkward to get going. That being said, as Rodion, she does have access to a few tools we would like to make use of, if at all possible. Most important will be Sanguine Desire. This thing allows us to slow down the decay of bleed counts for the turn, while also doubling the bleed potency inflicted by one of Rodya's skills. If Sky Clearing Cuts ever crits, that's a clean 20 bleed right there, which while funny as fuck, is real unlikely to ever happen. We're gonna want to play her minigame for some poise, throw out a Sanguine Desire when appropriate, then continuously try to get her counter off. Because it's a classic style counter, she needs to get hit first. And the best part about needing to get hit first is that her HP lowers, and sooner rather than later, she'll be in Fell Bullet range. And failing Fell Bullet murder, she'll at least contribute in death towards her two betters as slash power. She is here to die, but if possible, she can at least go out with a bang rather than a whimper. Regardless, once she dies, we give an ally with the slowest speed some slash damage. As there's a lot of Kurokumo on the field, and the initial planned backup is going to be slash heavy, this works out perfectly fine. If possible, we're going to get her killed first. Next, we land in the territory of 00 IDs. These guys are going to be fodder for the bullets, but also fodder for battle ready, provided they, of course, don't overperform. First off, let's cover Kurokumo Hongers. This motherfucker can carry you through Bamboo-Hatted Kim alone. Just don't let him use his S3 or Kim will actually murder you. The whole appeal of this freak is Cloud Cutter, his S2. He exists only for Cloud Cutter, normally. In this case, we're stealing his S1 for Ishmael's Lust Resonance. But if we somehow achieve it, Cloud Cutter can also be unbreakable, and can also reuse its coins while unbreakable. Some Looney Tunes shit watching this ID slash 4 times after taking staggering damage. Aside from that, his S3 has some crazy utility if he ever manages to use it before any other IDs. It inflicts 6 bloody paralysis. Yes, 6. It's so exceedingly stupid how much this is. While this S3 doesn't roll even remotely high, it doesn't bloody matter if we've got Dark Cloud. This thing can be unbreakable. As long as Honger somehow finds a way to outspeed everyone else while using his S3, he's guaranteeing a 1 clash from someone else, provided he doesn't use it on someone with minus coins, in which case he invariably dooms everyone instead. Of course, that might just be the idea in this composition, but make sure you know what you're doing before you try to paralyze a target that has minus point skills, otherwise the wrong IDs may start kicking the bucket instead. As for egos that we want to make use of, the main consideration is Roseate Desire. This thing lets us inflict Lust Fragility, as well as having the added bonus of inflicting defense power down and defense level down. If we can ever get some Gluttony resources for Tears of Tarnished Blood going, we can all but guarantee Honger's death. The steep cost, however, makes it rather difficult to fuel in this team composition, outside of one very specific backup swap. Oh, and while dead, Honger's just gives passive slop, more bleed to the fastest sinner. Since all of them inflict bleed, it's just good regardless. As for jobber number 2, we've got Kurokumo Clan Captain Gregor. This guy's S3 animation is one of the more fun ones. He slams a bottle into his opponent before slashing them up. This presumably somehow inflicts offense level down and plus coin drop, both rather useful statuses to have. Unfortunately, he does not roll high at all, needing some rather strict conditionals for coin power and some moderate amounts for clash power. If he can go unopposed and just inflict debuffs, he'll be doing his job quite well. All the more so if he's able to do it before the rest of the team, though a few of his debuffs do linger onto the next turn as required. The most notable being attack power down on his S2, so long as the opponent has 7 or more bleed. The combination of debuffs can be quite useful for filling both Heathcliff and Ishmael's negative effects conditionals, further stemming up their damage. For egos, we have limited options. Not too many of his egos are generically good outside of Unbrilliant Glory, that of which was a limited time deal. It's the best one we could probably ask for here since its ego passive works off of allies getting hit, staggered, or killed, that of which we intend on doing in spades. The active version of it is also quite useful as it inflicts both Tremor and Burn, both of which we can abuse for the negative effect conditionals if the timing is right. Past there, Gun on Thorns could see some use if we're desperately trying to keep people alive, but it is very unlikely to be utilized due to its subpar returns and costly ego resources. Also, don't use his base ego. That thing gives him protection when critically injured. We want to avoid that if possible. Once he begins riding the bench, we have access to offense level down on targets with at least 7 bleed. Inside of a Kurokumo team, this is basically a guarantee, so it's actually quite a nice support to have on the bench. All of the Kurokumo fellas out of the way, we've got a few more sinners to cover. First off is our tech choice, N-corp Ryoshu. While there could be an argument made for Kurokumo Ryoshu for the bleed count and access to Gluttony, we need N-corp Ryoshu to get the most out of Fell Bullet Yi-Sun. at least out of the identity. N-corp Joshu provides us several unique interactions with Yi-sung's S3. First off, if it is targeting an ally, Roshu will personally go and attack them with her S1. This attack cannot kill the target and instead acts to prime them for execution via fell bullet. In addition, if the target ends up being Roshu while she has contempt of the gaze, she will instead redirect the bullet towards her before deflecting it to up to 4 targets nearby, based on torn memory stacks. She can gain this effect through getting staggered, activating her defense skill and fulfilling conditionals, or through the use of contempt ore with at least 6 resin being the highest. All of this on its own is already really damn useful. However, if we take it a step further and make use of the ego more actively, we can generate ego resources we don't have and fuel egos we have no business using quite as often. Of course, we can generate more fuel for fell bullet. Anyhow, the rest of her kit revolves around Tremor Bleed, as well as inflicting stacks of gaze. They're rather self-sufficient and selfish kits, but because of the way that it works, we can make use of all the additional negative effects. In this case, getting 2 more on top of Bleed through Tremor and Gaze specifically. He also hits like a truck when allowed to ramp up, and grants us access to some of the most powerful egos. Aside from Contempt Ore, we're going to take a real close look at Forkalgia. Roshu's version of Forkalgia is functionally a pocket nebulizer, that of which being one of the most powerful ego gifts in Limbus Company. Through its use, we can turn any random Pride A resin we pull off into an instant return on poise for both herself and up to 5 other allies. If possible, we would want to kill at least an enemy or an ally with its use, since with the starting lineup, we'll be dealing out poise to Yi-sung and Rodya specifically. As Rodya is rather terrible at maintaining poise, she's bound to eat up a nebulizer stack of 1 for herself. With 2 stacks of nebulizer though, Yi-sung will get it no matter what. Past there, if she ever ends up riding the bench, she deals out bleed count, which can be very valuable. That covers everyone we plan on fielding. However, as we're looking to have sinners die, we're going to need some pretty reliable backup. For this, I'd like to introduce the Bloodfiend package, specifically the 2 third kindreds and Manager Don. With all of the bleed going on thanks to Kurokumo, there will inevitably be a lot of Bloodfiends to go around. This means that the moment Bloodfiends enter the picture, they are able to suck up all of the blood on the field, empowering all of their skills by a significant amount. The order they come out onto the field can be rather important, as each of them has different demands and ways of ramping up accordingly. First to field would be Barber Otis. By aggressively stacking up blood-tinged scissors, she can quickly turn into an AoE monster, as she would rapidly chew through the blood feast stacks to power herself up. In needing the longest time to ramp up, having her hit the field first benefits her most compared to the other 2. As she also applies suing targets, we're also able to gain more negative effect conditionals for the others to abuse. While waiting in the wings, she benefits us by healing after a kill and ramping up our bleed count upon landing kills. While the former is a bit more of a detrimental effect to our game plan, the latter does speed things up considerably for when the rest of the Bloodfiends arrive. Next to arrive should be Manager Don, as Don needs some time to ramp up as well. Having them arrive next would be appropriate. As the blood feast starts getting consumed by her, she can make use of the empowered S2 from Otis as well to deal rather large amounts of AoE damage. If we happen to find the need to then kill off Otis, she will also benefit from her passive as well, gaining 1 more hard blood from skills once at least 1 La Mancha land ally has fallen. Regardless, the rest of her kit is really powerful when allowed to consume blood feast, that of which should have significantly built up by the time she arrives on the field. In terms of egos, we can of course abuse Yearning Mikala. If enough blood feast has already been consumed, it can hit like a bloody truck and even leave further after effects if we stack it up in a lust resin. As for her capabilities while riding the bench, the less healthy our units are, the more damage they do. In this particular case, this is bloody amazing. We're functionally getting damage for free, as long as we subject our sinners to pain, of which we most certainly are. Next is the Prince of La Mancha Land Mersaults. While I'd love to be able to pair him off with Princess Rodya, we need Kurokumo Rodya to die for us instead for slash power and battle ready. This fella is hopefully the last to come in for our lineup, which means the goal would be to have 3 fell bullets go off, and hopefully no more. In general usage, Prince Mersault provides a ton of survivability, meaning that anything from here on may be significantly more difficult to kill via friendly fire. All that said, he's a slash ID that provides sustain and synergizes with Blood Feast we've built up over the course of the encounter. He can ramp up rather fast and provide a good chunk of healing while the others do so as well. Once ready to go, he can burn all of his stacks on an AoE and reset once again. Aside from that, he could just start applying bleed on the rest of the IDs and speeding up their demise. However, that's a consideration if we ever reposition him in the deployment order. Regarding egos, Mersault has his own Yearning Mikala, with differing effects to Don, mostly that it wishes to inflict bleed rather than scale off of Blood Feast consumption. Rose Wedge is a rather powerful effect too, giving a whole host of benefits for the Bloodfiends and Kurokumo both. As for bench riding, His passive multiplies Blood Feast generation twice per encounter. On a turn where a lot of bleed is expected to get triggered, this effect pays major dividends and should be a huge consideration for the longer fights in the game. Last are the two we would ideally wish to never see pop out during a chain battle. First is LCB Sinclair. His support passive is Grudge. We get an attack up the turn after we fell bullet someone or send someone to their death. Can potentially be useful, as long as we slot Yi Sung in the first slot. It all but guarantees it landing on him. While a single point of attack power isn't crazy useful, it can mean the difference between winning some of the nastier clashes and not. We can of course make use of Mexiclair too, if we just want a more normal support passive. If you prefer the consistency, you can make use of them instead. Just note that when they hit the field, you're going to want to hit them with Yi Sung's S3 rather than the Fell Bullet Ego. In comparison, LCB Sinclair is a perfect one-stop shop for Fell Bullet Ego application. Regardless, if Sinclair ever arrives on the field, it is specifically to die. As for Forced, we have two options here. One is She Forced. If she ever arrives on the field, she will have no build-up at all, and is likelier to just flop over and die after losing an arrow or two. That being said, if you just need someone to hopefully clutch things out, she can act as a pinch hitter due to being able to ready up an arrow and go unopposed. While riding the bench, however, she doesn't provide us all too much. Our PS IDs are unlikely to be the ones outputting the most bleed until Dawn arrives, and even then, she won't always be the one triggering it. For a less wasteful pick, we can grab N-corp Forced for Whisper. Having easy access to sanity gain is rather useful in many compositions. This one could stand to benefit as well. When she hits the field though, it'll be as a wet noodle, which honestly by then, if she can just tank some damage and become another Fell Bullet, that'll be more than enough. With all the sinners now covered, I suppose we should go over the play patterns. First to consider is Fell Bullet's poise generation. As an ID, he needs a little micromanagement to get going. His S2 specifically is a bit of a trap, as while it generates plenty of poise potency, it does little to favour your count. Instead, lead with an S1 where possible, or a counter when not. This gives you a steadier increase in poise, as the counts will be more stable. Once you can expect crits, you can then use his S2 to speed up Torn Memory generation. We ideally want to hit 7 Torn Memory and 13 poise, in order to always crit our allies with the S3. As long as you manage the count appropriately, this should pose little issue as long as you baby it for a while. That being said, we should be working towards 4 Calgia first. We're aiming for 5 Pride, 1 Wrath, and 1 Lust to be able to activate it by turn 2. If we can meet these conditions, then happy days. All of our poise issues should be solved, at least so long as we can get 2 for Calgia stacks. Otherwise, we'll be bouncing the bonus poise between Rodya and Yi Sung both, which while not the worst, is less than ideal for our purposes. Past the build up for Calgia, we want the rest of the Kurokumo to either take fights they can barely win, or unopposed into targets. This makes it so that bleed builds up without consuming quite as much counts, and the Kurokumo themselves get injured and lower their HP to Fell Bullet levels. We only want to do this to Gregor, Hongers, and Rodya if possible. Whenever we can get a 4 Lust Resin for those Unbreakables, we can abuse those too. Do note that anytime we line up a 5+ Resin of Lust, we are activating Prince Mersault's passive and multiplying Blood Feast for that turn. We can only do that twice, so save it for an Ishmael nuke and turns where clashes are bound to result in bleeding. A good turn for it may involve Sanguine Desire as well to keep the bleed count from dying even faster. As the turns drag along, a Kurokumo ID should be hitting breaking points. If one isn't for an extended period of time, line up a Contempt Ore as well as a Yi Sung S3 for the following turn. On the following turn, we can use Yi Sung's S3 on Runshu instead, for the reflection damage. From there, we can keep cycling until we see an opportunity to kill one of our own. As friendlies drop in HP, we're going to want to ready either the Ego or S3 for the kill. On Gregor specifically, we're going to want to use the S3 as he is pierce resistant, starting at ineffective, thus making the Ego have a more difficult time killing him. The same goes for the other two, albeit they are neutral to the damage instead, and can still be fodder for the Ego as required. Regardless of which you pick, as long as you land the kill, the outgoing damage will be substantial, and a Blood Fiend will switch in to soak up all of the accumulated Blood Feast. Otis makes a good pick for any encounter that requires AoEs, Mersault works for anything that requires sustain, and Don is overall okay, but should come in after one of the other two ideally. Now when all 3 Blood Fiends are on the field, Battle Ready should also be active for the Kurokumo duo. At this point we can look to spam Lust Resonance and Egos, fishing for damage accordingly. If the encounter keeps dragging on, we can dust off the rifle once more and finish off anyone who seems to be dying. As the nukes run their course, the encounter should wrap up. If it somehow keeps going on, you're probably on floor 11 plus of MD at that point and are facing adversities beyond your reckoning, or just picked something wrong at some point. Anyhow, that about sums up how I decided to run this guy. Functionally, it's a guy with a questionably Japanese gun, with a Lian filled in his pockets, plus his Chinese-Japanese partner in crime coming over to shoot up his syndicates. Oh, and there's vampires here too. All in all, it sounds like a B-grade movie or a really starved for ideas anime. There's plenty of synergies that are definitely overkill for a majority of content in this game, or strategies that only scale better in more difficult content. This is one of them. A really fun one that makes full use of the game's battle mechanics, specifically the need for backup units in chain battles, and comes with the expectation that you are willing to take damage accordingly. I implore you to not turn your nose up at strategies that can capitalize on sinners' deaths and washed up IDs. You'd be doing a disservice to the game's design at this point, limiting design space because you keep trying to fit a square peg into a circle hole, or eats one of the 7 status crayons. Consider solutions outside of the meta box. Ways of building that don't have to consult some fella's guide like my own to affirm your own beliefs. Besides that, thanks for watching. We're on the cusp of 1k subs now, which means I'm going to have to do ASMR sooner rather than later. On top of that, I'll be opening up memberships and a Discord server soon, so watch out for the community posts when that all goes live. If you've enjoyed my descent into madness over these past few weeks, please drop a like on the video. A subscription would also be appreciated. Oh, and no one has found all the gems in the Captainish video yet. That's still up for grabs. When you hear from me next, it'll either be the 1k special or potential man. Once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you with a new video real soon.